What if I told you there's a hidden code written into the very fabric of reality itself? We're going to explore a pretty fascinating argument today that connects mathematics, the universe, and the idea of a divine architect. The whole claim is that there's a mathematical signature all around us, and it might just be pointing to something or someone.
So let me ask you a question. What could a pineapple, a hurricane, and a galaxy possibly have in common? I mean, on the surface, absolutely nothing, right? One's a fruit you can eat, one's a massive storm, and the other is a cosmic swirl of stars billions of miles away. But what if they all share the same hidden secret?
Well, that secret is a mathematical signature. It's a pattern that shows up so consistently, it kind of challenges the whole idea that our universe is just a product of random chance. So what is this incredible code? Let's dive in.
Okay, let's start with something you can actually hold in your hand. Let's start with a simple pineapple.
If you look closely at a pineapple, and I mean really look, you'll see the scales form these beautiful spirals. Now, if you try counting those spirals as they curve in one direction, more often than not, you are going to find exactly 8 of them.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Now count the spirals going the other way. You'll find there are 13, so we have 8 and 13. Are these just 2 random numbers that happen to be on a pineapple? Not a chance.
Those numbers, 8 and 13, are actually back-to-back numbers in one of the most famous mathematical patterns ever, the Fibonacci sequence. It's that simple one where you just add the last 2 numbers to get the next one. And trust me, this pattern is not just hiding in pineapples. This sequence is literally everywhere, from the very small to the unimaginably massive. You see those spirals on a sunflower? Yeah, they often have 34 and 55 spirals, the very next Fibonacci numbers. You can find this pattern in pine cones, in seashells, and even in the unfathomably large arms of spiral galaxies. And this brings us right to the central question. Is this incredible repeating order just some kind of cosmic accident, or does this level of design imply there was a designer, a builder who intentionally put all the pieces together?
You know, this whole thing really comes down to a fundamental question about math itself. Did we, as humans, invent math as a tool to describe the world, or did we discover a language that was already written into the fabric of the universe?
The argument we're exploring today lands firmly on one side, that math is a discovery. It's not just some clever set of rules we made up, it's the underlying blueprint of reality itself, a language that existed long before we ever did.
And here is a stunning historical example of what that means. Back in the 1800s, astronomers saw that the planet Uranus was wobbling in its orbit. It wasn't following Newton's laws of gravity perfectly. Now, instead of just ditching the laws, some mathematicians made a bold prediction. They said there must be another planet out there pulling on it. They did the calculations, pointed to a very specific spot in the night sky, and in 1846, astronomers pointed their telescopes right there, and bam, they found Neptune, exactly where the math said it would be.
This unbelievable power of math to predict reality is what led Nobel Prize-winning physicist Eugene Wigner to call it a miracle. And just think about that for a second. Why should these abstract rules of math so perfectly describe the physical universe? There's no logical reason it has to be that way, and yet it is.
Okay, so let's zoom out from patterns in nature to the grandest scale possible. The argument expands from these mathematical patterns to the fundamental constants that actually govern our entire cosmos. It seems our universe is balanced on a razor's edge. Take the speed of its expansion right after the Big Bang. If it had been just a tiny fraction faster, matter would have flown apart too quickly for stars or galaxies to ever form. But if it had been just a fraction slower, everything would have immediately collapsed back in on itself. The window for a life-sustaining universe was just impossibly narrow.
Now, a very common counter-argument, voiced here by the late Stephen Hawking, is that you don't actually need a creator because the laws of physics themselves are enough to do the job. The law of gravity, he argued, could cause the universe to create itself from nothing.
But the response to this is that it confuses two very different things, describing reality and creating reality. Think of it this way. Math can describe the money in your wallet, but you can't just write plus $100 on a piece of paper and magically make that money appear. The argument here is that physical laws are great at describing how the universe works, but they don't have the power to bring the universe into existence in the first place. So, if the laws of nature can't create nature, and modern science tells us the universe had a definite beginning, where does that leave us? What really is the best explanation for where it all came from?
This is where a key distinction is made.
You see, in most ancient myths, the gods emerge from nature. They're part of a pre-existing reality. But the biblical account flips this idea completely. It presents a God who exists before nature and is the one who brings nature into being. The logic follows that if nature itself had a beginning, well, whatever caused it must exist outside of it.
Of course, this immediately leads to the classic objection that's always raised in these discussions. If everything needs a cause, then surely God needs a cause too, right?
Well, the argument here is that the question itself is based on a misunderstanding. We look for a cause for the universe because all the evidence points to it having a beginning. But the concept of God that's being presented here is of a being that is eternal, one without a beginning. And by definition, something that has no beginning doesn't need a cause.
This brings us to the final part of this whole argument, moving away from the how and the who to the ultimate why. If there is a designer, what was the motivation for creating everything?
To get a handle on what eternity even means, let's try to visualize it. Imagine you're counting 1,000,000 grains of sugar, 1 grain per second. That would take you about 11.5 days nonstop. Now, try counting to 1,000,000,000. That would take you nearly 32 years. Our entire lives are just a blink of an eye against that backdrop, just a single grain of sand on the infinite shores of eternity.
So what fills that unimaginable expanse of time? Before the Big Bang, what was there? The Christian view, drawing from prayers like this one, offers an answer: a perfect, self-sustaining relationship of love. And this leads to the final, really powerful idea, that creation wasn't an act of need, but an act of generosity, an overflow of that pre-existing love, an invitation for us to be part of it. And so we're left with one last question to consider. If the mathematical beauty and order of the universe really is a message, and it's a message born from a place of love, what is it trying to say to you?